Welcome back to another episode of the W Sports Podcast. It's your boy Tubby going at it alone, solo dolo once again, since Jimothy had to have a very quick decision where he had to go down somewhere else tonight. So I'm doing it by myself, but we get to break down one of my favorite things in sports, the NFL Combine from this last weekend. So welcome in. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and I will get to them, try to answer them as best as I can if I can see them, because I don't know how to run this by myself, so we will see what happens. But welcome in. We had a great Combine. I watched every single minute of it like normal. I'm probably one of the few people in the world that watches every single second of the NFL Combine to be able to break down players for the upcoming series where I drop my knowledge for the NFL draft on position players to keep an eye out for, rank my top 5 players at each position, so you guys have the information ready for you when it comes draft time at the end of April. So welcome in, drop some questions. We're going to get started right off the bat with some winners, and I'm going to go position by position. I have this broke down from quarterback all the way down to corner, so get ready. It's going to be a lot of information. So we're going to start from the top with the quarterbacks. I think this player won the Combine leaps and bounds ahead of everyone in any single position. That was Jackson Dart. We know that going into this draft that there was 2 big quarterbacks at the top, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Well, neither of them did any of the drills at the Combine. Jackson Dart went out there and just put on an absolute show, showed why he deserves. And I've been saying this for the last 3 or 4 months. I thought Jackson Dart had every opportunity to put himself into the discussion of a first-round pick. I had him ahead of Jalen Milroe, had him ahead of Quinn Ewers far before this happened. And so for me, kind of reaffirmed what I had seen on the field and what I had seen him be able to do, and that was be a really good, quarterback. And I think that he has a chance to potentially be one of the top quarterbacks. I think that in this draft, there's not really quarterbacks that you look at and you go, yeah, that is for sure franchise quarterback right there. So I think that it's somewhat of a weaker quarterback class, but I think he really helped himself out. And at first I thought maybe he's going to be, in the 20s. I think he's catapulted himself up to at least the mid first round now with the way he performed. I think that a lot of people sleep on the athleticism that he actually has. So next quarterback, I think, is Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard went through the drills and looked really good. He, to me, was the second best quarterback at the Combine. When it came to the throwing drills and everything, he seemed like he commanded it. The deep ball was a lot better, I think, than a lot of people were expecting. That was the big question for him. Did he have the arm? Did he have the accuracy? Did he have the touch for those deep balls? And he really showcased that, in those on-field drills, which I think really helped his draft stock. And then another guy, I think, did the same exact thing. And I wasn't big on him going into the draft, but I really liked what I saw at the Combine, was Brady Cook. I mean, once I went back after the Combine, I went back and watched, and he had some really good moments. This year wasn't great. He had a lot of injury, concerns this year. So I think it really hurt his draft stock. But you go back and look, and then you look at the numbers, only had 4 interceptions over the last couple of years, each of the last 2 years. Those are really good, deep ball, out ball. The arm strength is there. So I think these 3 guys really separated themselves from the rest of the field outside of, Shedeur and Cam Ward at the top. Now we're going to go to the running backs. Omari and Hampton, I love Ashton Jeanty. I think Ashton Jeanty is going to be a great NFL running back. But after watching this and watching more film, and yeah, it was a bad year for North Carolina, but it was not a bad year for Omari and Hampton. I think it's a 1A, 1B type situation when we're looking at running back, and it really just kind of comes down to what does that front office, prefer in their running backs. Hampton is a bruiser, but he has the speed. He has the ability to catch the ball. Jeanty is, a little bit more, on the smaller side compared to Marion Hampton, but we saw what he was able to do in college football, so I think that's going to translate really well for him. But Hampton really put himself in that discussion where it's more of a preference and not just going, yep, that guy's automatically the top running back. Travion Henderson was another one. We saw him at the end of the year, and he was the big reason I think that Ohio State, offensive wise, was able to go on the run they did in the playoffs because he went out there and had a great playoffs, and then he came back into the combine and really just lit up the combine. And I think he really put himself in a really good spot where he's probably now the third running back. I think it's a toss up between him and Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Once again, I think it'll be a preference thing. Do you want the big bruiser from Caleb, or do you want the kind of multifaceted, can receive fast, can break some tackles, and Travion Henderson? And then the third running back was Bashul Tutin from Virginia Tech came out there and just went off. We saw the 40 time, we saw the catching ability. I think he'll be a really good third down back when it comes to receiving out of the backfield. So I think that he really set himself up really good. I mean, this is one of the better running back classes we have seen in quite some time. I believe. I think there's probably 5 or 6 guys in this draft that I think at some point could be a starting running back in the NFL. So it was kind of hard to narrow it down, but Jeanty, the thing is, all those top running backs, they went out there and competed. We seen Jeanty out there. We saw Quinshon Judkins. I mean, Jeanty, we didn't get to see the drills because he did, tweak something in his 40 time. So we kind of got robbed there. But I think Ollie Gordon is another running back in this draft that has fallen down the draft boards because of the somewhat bad season. I think a lot of that was due to just the terribleness we saw from Oklahoma State, not so much what we saw from Ollie Gordon. But I think this running back class is going to be a special one. I think a lot of people overlooking this running back class, and we are seeing the running backs kind of come back into the fold when it comes to the NFL. All those top teams, me and Jimothy, we have hammered this home for the last 5 years or 4.5 years, however long it's been. Running backs are so important, and we saw the NFL kind of push them away. Well, now we saw Saquon and all these running backs start to really put the stamp back on there, going, hey, you need a top running back in the NFL to really compete. So I think that this class is benefiting from that with some of these guys that are in this draft class. So we're going to go to the wide receivers. We got Matthew Golden from Texas. He went out there blazing 40 time, but for me, it was more of the on-field drills. Yeah, I knew he was fast. I didn't know he was 4.29 fast. That one really shocked me, but I think he really did good in the receiving drills, catching with his hands, not with his body. The route running was really crisp. And, for me, if you've watched the podcast, you've watched my videos when it comes to the draft, what I'm looking for from a wide receiver is the separation and the ability to have a multifaceted route running tree. And he has shown something a lot more than I expected. I'm going to have to go back and watch more film on him after this combine, because I watched him play Texas and all that. But I think that this guy is kind of sneaking up my draft board a little bit with the way he's been able to perform. The next guy is Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Big 6'4", can run fast, got a catch radius like most people don't have in this draft. Maybe probably the best one outside of Teteroa McMillan. Travis Hunter has a great one for not being the super big guy, but I really liked what I saw from Jaden on the field in the 40 time. The next one is Jack Beck. We saw him go out and just absolutely smash the Senior Bowl, have a big game, kind of contributed to his brother, who lost his life during the stuff on Bourbon Street a few months back. He really went out there, I think, put himself in a great position. And I think Alex Aomeyer from Stanford was another one. Somewhat, bigger, not really bigger, 6'1", 215, ran a 4.4. He reminds me a lot of Jordy Nelson. The way he's able to separate downfield. He's not the fastest guy, but he's more quick and deceptive in his movements. I think he really helped himself out a lot. Tight end group. This tight end group is one of the best I've seen ever. It's up there with the Sam Laporta, year where we saw those tight ends get drafted. This group is right there. We didn't get to see Colston Loveland. We didn't We didn't get to see Tyler Warren. You didn't see those top two guys, but the two that really stood out to me was Mason Taylor and Terrence Ferguson. Terrence Ferguson had a monster year at Oregon with Dylan Gabriel there with all the receptions and the touchdowns. He really put himself in a great position. Mason Taylor, to me, I think Mason Taylor's the most slept on tight end in this draft. Just barely 20 years old, not even 21 yet, can't even drink yet. This young man knows how to block and he knows how to catch. I think when it's all said and done, I think there's a very good chance in a couple years we look back at this and Mason Taylor's the best tight end in this draft. I love Tyler Warren. I love what Colson Loveland can do, but there's just something about Mason Taylor, the way he's able to play and how young he is and how, well developed he is at this young age. It's just going to keep getting better and better. I think he's going to be a really, really, really good tight end in the NFL. Next, we're going to go to the interior offensive line. Gray Zabel, he went out and had a huge Senior Bowl. Also, North Dakota State, to me, he's the best interior offensive lineman. Went out there and proved it on the on-field drills. Really showed that he can play pretty much any position. I don't know if you want him playing tackle, but if you need an emergency tackle, that guy can play tackle. He can play either guard position, and I think he's the best center in the draft. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, I think he had a really good one. He didn't run the fastest time, but in the on-field drills, he's really smooth for a big guy, and he moves a lot better in those drills than you would think for a guy his size. Emory Jones, is another guy. He had a really good Senior Bowl also, and then came out there and backed it up with the combine. I think he's really improved his draft stock. And same thing with Jared Wilson. He came out there at the combine and put up some good numbers, really good in the on-field drills. I think, to me, he's the second best center in this draft, and really improved his draft stock also. I think offensive tackle, there's so many good offensive tackles in this draft. We didn't get to see a couple of the, or actually we did. We did get to see all of them. We already know Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks, they did nothing to hurt the draft stock. All they did was just reaffirm what we knew, that they were the two best offense tackles in this draft. But two guys that I think really stood out, and I had some questions going into it, was Josh Conerly. Didn't have the best Senior Bowl practices, had a really good Senior Bowl game, which I think, might be a little more important to see the in game, but he looks super fluid, super athletic. He's young, big. I think this kid can develop into a linchpin on the left side of the offensive line for years to come. And then a guy that I have been questionable on the last few months, and someone that's really gained a lot of steam, and there's a lot of people big on him, is Armand Mimbo from Missouri. He plays a lot of right tackle, hasn't really played a whole lot of left tackle. So that's one question. Do you want to spend that much on a right tackle if there's still some questions? It's not like you're drafting Penei Sewell, where we all thought Sewell was going to end up on the left side. Well, Taylor Decker was able to hold it down, and all we know is Penei Sewell is one of the best right tackles in the NFL, if not the best. So they both really helped themselves, and Mimbu, he really just kind of showed me something a little bit more than I was expecting. Edges, the edge defensive line group is insane this year when it comes to the draft. I think the trenches are where you're going to win a lot in this draft with these guys. The offensive line, defensive line, edge. It's super deep. The edges, Shamar Stewart came out and just showed us the freak athlete that he is. Didn't have the big eye-popping stats this year, only a couple sacks, but I think a lot of it was due to him playing a little bit out of position, not really getting to play the edge, playing more of a defensive end in Mike Bobo's system. So I think that really hindered him a little bit. But the guy looks like your prototypical edge rusher, 6'4", 6'5", can run 4.4, blazing off the edge, super strong, athletic, whatever you want. If you can get him in the right system and develop him, I think this guy could turn into a monster in the NFL. Landon Jackson out of Arkansas was another guy. He was super productive. There's still the video going around from, a few years back from a camp where, he's just barely slapping the bag and people are like, oh, he's not even trying. This kid is a stud edge rusher. I think he's going to end up in day 2, maybe day 3, but I think it's going to be a steal for someone because I think he has the motor and is going to be able to, put some pressure on some guys. Then Tyler Barron from Miami was another one. I a thought that really helped himself out. He was a little bit further down, didn't have the big production that I think a lot of people expected for him when he transferred to Miami this year. But I think he's someone that could really be a good depth piece at some point in the NFL. The defensive tackle, I have 4 because, like I said, this defensive tackle class is incredible. There's so many good defensive tackles in this class. It's hard to pick. The top 2 guys, I think defense tackle didn't, or probably 2 of the top 3 didn't get to compete because of injuries from the season. But Derek Harmon from Oregon really stood out to me as, someone that a lot of people are sleeping on. I think he'll end up at some point getting pushed into the back end of the first round, and someone's going to get a really good, productive pass rushing defensive tackle. Omar Norman Lott is another guy. I watched him a lot at Tennessee this year, watching a lot of SEC football. I think someone that, for some reason, I think a big part of it is due to his size, isn't getting enough love for what he can do. The get off is some of the best in the draft when it comes to getting off the ball at the snap. He is a menace on the inside. Darius Alexander, small school Toledo guy, had an incredible combine, really turned some eyes. I think really, made some scouts look at him and going to go back and have to look more at his film. Then Tyleik Williams from Ohio State was another. Like you said, these guys came out and just put on a show on the defensive line. It was a great start to the combine, seeing these edge rushers and defensive linemen come out there and just started off right. The linebackers, this is a good linebacker draft, but I don't know if there's like a super deep position here. I think there's some really good ones. I think Jahad Campbell is clearly the number 1 inside linebacker. He went out there, showed the athleticism, did everything. He went into college as a defensive end edge rusher and converted it into an inside linebacker. That's how athletic he is. And he's just getting started at that position. So there's a lot of room for growth for him. And then Danny Stutzman, I'm going to sound like an Oklahoma homer, but Danny went out there and I think just put on a show at the combine. He ran a lot faster than I was expecting. The mobility, the big question for him was the explosiveness whenever it gets to the outside, and I think he answered those questions at the combine. The safeties, to me, the safety class is probably the weakest outside of the quarterbacks. But Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina, he's probably the second highest winner in this combine behind Jackson Dart. What he did was, to me, he was my number 1 safety, and he just reaffirmed that. I like Malik Starks, but I like what Emmanwori can do. I like everything about him. He's a hard hitter. He's super fast. He's a ball hawk in the secondary. I think this kid's bound to have a great NFL career. And then the corners, you got Maxwell Harrison. To me, he was the best corner at the Senior Bowl, and then went out there and just replicated what we saw at the Senior Bowl. Ran so super fast. The ball skills are incredible. The hips, the fluidity, the feet, everything we saw at the combine, I think really pushed him up the draft board, especially with some of these other guys, hurt. Benjamin Morrison, Siobhan Revel, Jahdae Barron, which I'll get to later, who didn't have a great combine. He's really helped himself out, outside of Will Johnson and Travis Hunter. I think he has put himself in a great position to be one of the top corners drafted. Trey Amos is another one from Ole Miss. I think that a lot of people aren't looking at. I think he has great ball skills. He had fluid hips, feet, everything that you look for in a bigger corner. He did a really good job at the combine, ran faster than I was expecting. So I think he really helped himself out. Then I think the guy that helped himself out the most is Darian Porter from Iowa State. 6'4", ran like a 3, I want to say 4.3, 840 something at 6'4", big rangy corner, physical. I think he really helped himself out because a lot of people were worried about the athleticism and the speed that could he have at 6'4". So he's really helped himself out, because if you can get a guy that size with the technique that he can have at 6'4", you're going to be hard pressed to not pass on him. So those are my winners. Now we're going to get to the losers. Not as long of a list, because there were some positions I just didn't think that guys really lost, especially some of these top guys. But we're going to start from the top again. Once again at quarterback, I think Quinn Ewers did not help himself out. He had a couple bad, or not a couple, quite a few bad throws, not super accurate. For some reason, they were like all over him at the commentary at the combine. I didn't think he had a great showing. Jalen Milroe, another one. The feet in the pocket, it's going to be the biggest problem from him. He reminds me a lot of Anthony Richardson. I wasn't big on Anthony Richardson going into the draft a couple years ago. Still not, and that's who he reminds me of. A super athletic guy with a strong arm, good downfield guy, but he's going to complete, a handful of those, and that's going to be about it. Will Howard was another one, just had an awful combine. If you watched it, I'm sure you've seen some of the videos, some of the throws he had at the combine. He did not help himself out. Another one that hurts me to say is Dylan Gabriel did not help himself out. The accuracy was a lot of what we saw at Oklahoma, where he missed high and away. And part of it could be too that those wide receivers aren't used to a left-handed quarterback. That's a big change. Then another one, though he didn't compete, and I already talked about this last week with Shedeur Sanders. I really thought he needed to go out there and compete and answer some of those questions that some of the scouts have when it comes to the arm strength. We know Cam Ward didn't need to. Cam Ward is the best quarterback in this draft class, but Cam Ward, the ball just pops out of his hands a lot different than it does Shedeur, and that's the biggest question with Shedeur is the ball. He doesn't have as much strength on it. He has some good accuracy over the middle, but when it comes to those deep balls and those out routes, does he have the arm strength and to be able to beat some of those, close in contact corners? I don't know. Wide receiver, I don't think it was because of his on-field. What I think really lost it for Tez Johnson was coming in at 153 pounds. A lot of people will see that and they're like, yeah, he's going to get beat up. He's going to get broken. I still love Tez Johnson. He reminds me a lot of Tank Dell. So if I'm a team, I'm not afraid to take him. He's going to put on some muscle when he gets to the NFL, put on some weight. I think he's still going to be a really good NFL player. I think the only thing that hurt him was his size. Tight end, there's a couple guys that had some rough days, even with this deep, and it hurts them because it's such a deep tight end class. I think that it probably pushes their draft stock. Harold Fannin Jr. From Bowling Green, he had a monster season this year, but everyone thought he was going to be this, go into the combine and be the super athletic guy. Ran a 4.7, which isn't awful, but it's not something super fast that I think a lot of people are expecting to be closer to the 4.5, 4.6. Wasn't quite there. Didn't have great on field. Gunnar Helm, I kind of give him a pass because he did sprain his ankle in his first 40 time, but still went out there and competed, but had a couple drops and didn't look super crisp, which part of that could have been due to the ankle injury. Edge, Jack Sawyer, I think hurt himself a lot. We saw him have a monster playoff or monster season really for Ohio State, but the playoffs really, I think, kind of pushed his draft stock up, but I think the combine kind of pushed it back down. James Pierce from Tennessee, he had a great combine when it came to the on-field and the running, but a lot of what you're hearing from teams is that his interviews were awful, that he is a super arrogant person, and a lot of teams were put off by the answers that he had, and I think that really hurt him. Defensive line, Deon Walker from Kentucky. He's a monster. He's 6'7", 6'8", big old defensive tackle. We knew he wasn't going to run fast, and this combine wasn't made for him. He's a big run stuffer, and so he obviously wasn't going to look good, but it doesn't help. We've seen it happen time and time again when we know these guys aren't going to compete well at the combine. Look at Orlando Brown, who is a really good left tackle in the NFL, ran super slow, pushed him down to the third, fourth round. I think that's probably what we're going to see happen to Deon Walker, and someone's going to get him a good run stuffer in the third, fourth, fifth round. Linebackers, like I said, not a super deep linebacker class. Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss did not help himself one bit. He ran super slow, didn't look athletic, did not look prepared for the combine. On-field drills did not look great for him. And I think Barrett Carter from Clemson, to me, he did not look like he stood out very much. He didn't show the athleticism that I saw on tape. So that was kind of concerning. And then the corners, two of them are going to be due to injuries. And from the depth that we have seen from the corners and what we saw from the combine, it's going to hurt them. Benjamin Morris and Siobhan Revel, those two guys, I think, are still really good corners, and I think that they are going to be really good NFL corners. But both of them not being able to compete at the combine definitely hurt them with the way Maxwell Harris and Trey Amos and Darian Porter, were able to compete and show out, it hurts their draft stock a good bit. I think both of them now probably push down into the second round. And then I'd mentioned him earlier, Jahdae Barron. He was the Jim Thorpe Award winner for best corner in college football, and he didn't run super fast. I didn't think he looked great in the on-field drills. I think, to me, he's probably going to make the move to safety once he gets to the NFL. I know there's a lot of questions. Can he stick at corner? I don't think he can. I don't see the fluidity in the hips so much for him to be able to. I think a lot of his numbers were a little inflated with the teams that Texas played this year. I think that's a lot with a lot of Texas defensive players. I think their stats and the numbers were really inflated with the really weak schedule that they had. So this one didn't shock me a whole lot, but I think it's definitely did not help his draft stock. But that's it for my wrap up for the combine. I know it's a lot, but we know Tubby loves the combine, loves talking about the draft. So you had to expect I was going to come out with a lot of information. But before we go, we do have a winner for the signed jersey, which surprisingly no one guessed the correct player. So no one got the extra entries, but the winner for the Brian Dawkins signed NFL jersey is Corey L., which I know who Corey L. is, and he is a massive Eagles fan. So he's going to be super excited about that. So congratulations, Corey. I'll get with you in the next day or so, get your information, get this jersey out to you. But congratulations. But don't worry, we'll have more giveaways in the next couple months. We don't know what the next giveaways are going to be. We're going to probably try to gear towards some baseball stuff. So we'll see what happens with baseball season coming up. But if you aren't subscribed, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. The only way, it's the easiest way to get entered into our giveaways each month is to hit that subscribe button. So if you aren't doing it, do it now, so you're entered into it. So it was fun talking to the combine with you. We'll be back on again this week. Remember, you just got to listen. See ya.